right, so now we're going to try some AP questions covering all of our Unit 7 against the AP Curriculum Unit 6, right, which is some AP questions related to this stuff. All right, which of the following definite integrals is equal to the limit as n approaches infinity of all this stuff? So if you remember, when did we cover stuff that looked like this? This was in our section on Riemann sums. Because Riemann sums are when you're adding together a bunch of rectangles. Right? So each of these things should represent the area of a rectangle. So now you got to figure out which of these functions matches. And we have to keep in mind for each rectangle, we're going to have a width and a height. The height is the complicated part because that's where we're plugging in our x's and stuff, and those are the ones that are going to change. The width is not going to change. So what is the width in this expression? The width is 5 over n. Why is that the width? Because that's the one that doesn't have a k in it. K is the number that's changing all the time. So the thing that's never going to change is the width, because all these rectangles have the same width. So the width is 5 over n. And how do we figure out the width? We take the distance that we want and divide it by the number of rectangles, and all of these have a distance of 5. So that part doesn't really help us too much with narrowing down our choices. Right. But there's two parts that are going to change, all right, because of the k. All right, there's a number out in front that's going to change, and a number inside the square root that's going to change. So there should be two changing parts of our expression, which means there should be two x's, two x places in our expression. So a and c are going to be out because there's just a 10 at the front, and there was just a 10 at the front. We wouldn't need this k over n there because it wouldn't be changing. The 10 would always be there all by itself. So that's why I'm taking a and c out. All right, the next thing is if there was not a 1 in the square root, then this would be an x, and there would also have to be a similar x over here, but there's no 1 plus over here, so b is going to be out, and it's going to turn out that the right answer is d. Because when I plug in this 5k over n, which ends up being the kind of x value I'm currently plugging in, if I plug that 5k over n into here, that just goes there, I multiply it by 2, it gives me that. All right, so these are really hard questions to answer, but you can kind of see how I broke it down. Because there's two k values, that's the value that's changing, I can get rid of the ones that don't have two x's, and then I see that there's only one of these 1 pluses, so there should only be one of those in my expression, giving me d. The graph of the function f is shown above, so it's the original graph, and let g be the function defined by g of x equals 1 to x f of t dt. At what values does g have a relative minimum? All right, so it's going to connect a lot of different things we learned. When does a function have a relative, or sorry, I said minimum, but it's maximum, relative maximum? All right, it has a relative maximum when it looks like that, which means its derivative, I don't know why I'm writing in the highlighter, its derivative goes from positive to negative. So if its derivative function goes from positive to negative, then we know it has a relative maximum. Right. Well, what's the derivative of g? G prime of x. Because g of x is an accumulation function, because it has that integral there, use the fundamental theorem of calculus part 1, which says you just plug that x in for t, and I get f of x. So this graph of f is actually the same as the graph of the derivative of g. And when does my derivative go from positive to negative? It happens there. All right, these positive values to those negative values, and that's it. So the only place it happens is 1. All right, so it's connecting a lot of different things, knowing that if I'm looking for a relative maximum, I want to find the derivative. I find the derivative by doing the fundamental theorem of calculus. All right, f be the function given by that. Which of the following intervals is f increasing? Well, this, again, is kind of similar and related to the previous problem. F is increasing if f prime of x is bigger than 0. So I need to find f prime of x and then figure out when it's bigger than 0. Well, f prime of x, this is a fundamental theorem of calculus problem, is going to be negative x squared minus x plus 6. All right, I just plug this x in for those t's. All right, figure out when this quadratic is bigger than 0. I start off by figuring out when it's equal to 0. One thing I would do that you don't have to do is I'd multiply everything by a negative, turn this into x squared plus x minus 6. And then I can factor it a little bit easier because it makes a little bit more sense in my head. And I get negative 3 and 2. So now I use those to make my number line. And I do my test points. Like negative 5, something like 4. This one's the easy one. If I plug in 0, I get a positive. And if I plug in negative 5, you would get a negative. Plug in 4, you get a negative. And again, I'm plugging into my derivative function because I want to figure out if my derivative is bigger than or equal to 0. When is it bigger than or equal to 0? In the middle there, from negative 3 to 2. So again, just connecting multiple different things from multiple different units. Increasing means your derivative is positive. You find the derivative by doing the fundamental theorem of calculus, and then kind of that number line stuff we learned in Unit 6 from there. All right, the integral from negative 2 to 8 of 3g of x plus 2 is 35. And they give us the integral from 5 to negative 2. All right, what is the integral from 5 to 8? So the first thing, whenever they give me these ones with a bunch of different bounds, I want to find out, I want to make a number line just so I can kind of make sense. I have negative 2 to 5 to 8. My final goal is to figure out what is just the normal integral from 5 to 8. What I know is the integral from negative 2 to 5, I know this part, all right, it's going to be a little confusing. I'm going to say it's positive 12. All right, why is it positive 12? Because these bounds are switched from the way that they normally are written. Normally have the lower number first and the higher number second. So if we want to flip this to the normal order and make it the integral from negative 2 to 5, I just get rid of this negative sign and make it positive 12. All right, so that's positive 12. I don't know the green part yet, but I can figure out the full part using this first statement. All right, so there's a couple of different things I can do here. All right, I can split up integrals over the plus sign, so I can write this as two different integrals. I just keep forgetting the dx part. And then constant multiples I can bring out in the front. And then I can figure out what this is by doing just the normal fundamental theorem of calculus. I take the antiderivative, it's going to be 2x, evaluate it from negative 2 to 8. So when I plug in 8, I get 16. Subtract when I plug in 2. 16 plus 4 is 20. All right, so this is 20. So now I'm going to subtract 20 from both sides. So I can get this 3 from negative 2 to 8, g of x equals 15. Then I can divide everything by 3 to cancel out that 3. And I get that the full integral has to be 5. All right, I'm writing very little because I'm running out of room. All right, but the full integral from negative 2 to 8 of g of x has to be 5. So all of this together from negative 2 to 8 has to be 5. And how do I get from 12 to 5? What did that green missing part have to be? What did I get from 12 to 5? I'd have to add negative 7, subtract 7. That is the area under the curve from 5 to 8. This is basically using all of the rules of integration, breaking pieces together, using the combinations to figure out what the missing value had to be. This is a function because of 3 line segments and 2 semicircles. What is the value of negative 4 to 7? This is just kind of a straightforward one where it's just trying to find the area of the curve from negative 4 to 7. We're going to break it up into a bunch of different pieces. So this first part is just a triangle. That's going to be 1/2 base times height, which is 2 by 2. So that is an area of 2. The semicircle here is half of a circle, so half of pi r squared, and its radius is 2. So that is 2 pi, but don't forget that this is under the x-axis, this is negative 2 pi. The next part, there's a bunch of different parts you could do. Definitely this triangle would probably be the next thing I'd do. That triangle is the exact same, just a mirror image of the original triangle, so we know that one's 2. And then we have this semicircle up here, which I will put in green. And we have this kind of red box here. This red box is fairly simple. It's just a rectangle. It's 2 high, 3 wide. It's 6. So let's write it in a different color. All right, so that's 6. That little semicircle is another half of a circle. Its radius is 1. So it's 1/2 pi. All right, so now we add everything together. The whole number part is 10. And the pi part is we're going to take negative 2 pi and add 1/2 pi. That's negative 3 pi over 2. All right, so our final answer is B. All right, D would be the answer you would get if you forgot that that semicircle below the x-axis was negative. All right, selected values of the twice differentiable function f and its derivative f prime are given below. What is the value of the integral from 0 to 6 of f prime of dx? All right. Well, how do we evaluate integrals? All right, we do areas. There's no area to look at. We don't know what f prime is. All right, or we could do the fundamental theorem of calculus. All right, the fundamental theorem of calculus says to figure out this integral, I take its antiderivative. The antiderivative of f prime is just f of x. And I evaluate it from 0 to 6. That's when I plug in 6 first. And I subtract when I plug in 0. And I'm plugging these into the original function. When I plug in 6, I get 2. I plug in 0, I get negative 22. Add that together, 24. So this one is really just a direct application of the fundamental theorem of calculus. Again, sometimes it's a little confusing because they give you not much information. All right, what do you do with not this much information? You just kind of use any rule that you know, see if you can make something happen. In this case, just do the fundamental theorem of calculus, and they give you the values that you need. All right, so these are some AP questions, connecting everything from our Unit 7, all right, things that can kind of prepare you for our upcoming unit test. But now that you've seen some AP questions, you can slay the day.